Welcome back to our series on subcontractors. So far in the previous videos, we've talked about where do you find them? And once you find them, how do you onboard them and set up expectations and guidelines so that they can operate the way that you want to operate? And once you've done that, this video number 3, is how do you manage to keep them long term? How do you create a relationship with your subcontractors where they're going to stay with you versus leaving and going to all the other people in this climate and this day and age that are trying to come and get them every single day? So I want to start with, I think it's really, really important that you've got to find a way to create loyalty and trust with your subcontractors. And understanding your subcontractors and the things that they need, the things that are important to them, and most importantly, the things that are frustrating. What's frustrating about working in this industry that would cause them to say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go work for that other person. Obviously, money is a piece of that. But if you've worked out a way using a work order system that they're comfortable and they're getting paid a fair amount, then the other things are being taken advantage of, feeling like they can't get out of the house because they're always being asked to do extra things. And so I want to go through a couple of things, some tangible things that are going to help with that, and also some things that are just a perspective change in the way that we view subcontractors. So the tangible things are this. One, you've gone through in a subcontractor agreement and you've made some commitments of, I'm going to pay fair, I'm going to pay on time, all of those type of things. The things that you've committed to them to do, you have to follow through with them. If they feel like you're not following through, they're not going to feel any sense of loyalty or need to go the extra mile or to do the right thing because you're not doing it either. So it's really important to follow through on the things you've committed to them. Another thing that is a really big helper in this is showing them a pipeline of new business that's coming up that you have earmarked for them. Let's say they're on a job from Monday to Friday. You show them another work order for a job that they can start on Saturday or Monday. That does a couple of things. It helps them feel secure that they've got more work coming in, that they've got more money coming in, but it also helps create a sense of urgency on your current job to get it completed by Friday so that they can start this new job and they're not leaving money on the table. I always tell my subs, I got this for you. If you can be done by Friday, this one's for you. If you can't and this job is going to roll over to Monday, that's fine. I'm going to have to give this work order to somebody else. So that's a really helpful thing that's going to allow the sub to know that they've got more business coming and more money on the table. The last one is one that I've already talked about in a previous video, is the importance of using a work order system. For subcontractors, one of the really complicated, frustrating pieces of it is when you get to the end of the job and you say, yep, I'm 100% done, and I walk out to the property and there's 4 or 5 things that aren't done. Or there was some miscommunication about a line item that now I want them to go do stuff and they're feeling like they're not getting paid for it and they're getting asked to do stuff for free. And so using a work order system that spells out intricate details of every line item of what they're supposed to do with a dollar amount at the bottom, and then following that up with before the job is done, a couple days ahead of time, going in, walking the property. Everybody knows the blue tape walk, but being thorough with it, that if you do all of these blue tape items, you're out of the house. I'm going to pay you 100%. You're out of the house and you can move on to that new work order that I showed you earlier this week. So those are some just tangible things that are really important to help mitigate the frustrations for a subcontractor. This next part is a perspective change for the contractor. And I think this is a really big one, and it's difficult to get to, but I think it's really, really important. It is the perspective, most of the time, contractors' perspective of subs, are that they are the tool that I use to make money. And because of that, we can mistreat subcontractors, we can talk down to them, we can forget about communicating to them, whatever it is. And that's all about us having a wrong perspective. And the way that I like to look at it is switching that perspective over to, what if this was a friend of mine that was a subcontractor for me? What if it was my brother? What if it was a family member? How would that change the way that I interact with them, the way that I teach and coach them, the way that I help them out? So I think finding a way to get to that perspective is really important. And I think that's the very beginning of the subcontractor onboarding meeting. That very first part is starting to get to know them, starting to build that relationship with them so you can know and understand they have a family, they have 2 kids, they have 4 kids, they are looking to buy a new house, understanding them as a person and a human being versus a tool is really, really important. And learning how to raise the flag in our own heads of when we're going back to hammering somebody and being on top of them and not treating them fairly because they've just become a tool and they're not a human being or a friend or somebody that I care about. And if I have the perspective of they're a friend and somebody I care about, there's a couple of different things that I would do differently. One is, if I'm walking a property and going and seeing how things look and how the progress is, I'm going to have some encouraging things to say, like, hey man, that wall, the paint job is killer. You guys are really knocking it out. Or, I had never expected you guys to be this far along on this item. That's impressive. You guys are really good at what you do. And then following that up with a few things that you see that need to be, hey, will you touch this up? Will you make sure that, I don't like this, would you mind redoing that? That helps a lot. And that's the way that I would talk to a friend or a brother or somebody that I really care about. And it makes your subcontractor more willing to say, yeah, 100%, I'll get that taken care of for you. But another thing, when we're talking about building loyalty and trust that's going to last long term, if I've got a friend on site or a family member or whatever, and they got into a hard situation personally, they didn't have enough money for groceries one week, they ended up in jail. So, you guys know anything can happen. Subcontractors go through a lot of stuff just like we do. And is there an opportunity that you can step in and help this person in that personal situation that's going to help them be able to get back on your job site and be excited to work because you were there for them? And that's a huge piece of it. We've got a couple of subs that have worked for us for a long, long time, and they've had some situations in their lives that were really difficult in their personal lives, and we had the opportunity to step in and help them out and help move them through the situation that they were in. And then those guys found themselves at our 10-year reunion, our 15-year reunion with the company. We invited those guys in because they're family. They're people that have been with us for a long time. They've been incredibly loyal, and it's because we've paid them well. We've done what we said we were going to do, but we also stepped in when we didn't have to in a personal situation to help them out. Now, obviously, some of that is a little selfish. I want to help them out of this situation so they're not focused there, so that they're focused back here. That's fine. It's still the opportunity to be able to step in and help them. One of the other things that I do when I'm walking around a job site or when I'm talking to my subcontractors is I look for opportunities of little small things that I can do to help them do their job better, encourage them, get to the job quicker or faster. We've had guys that constantly go and buy the cheapest tire that they can get. We'll go buy them a brand new tire. We'll find a guy who's going constantly back and forth because he doesn't have enough room in his van to get the tools that he needs. And so we'll look to buy him a trailer that they can pull some of that. It's a couple $100, but now that guy is no longer going back and forth. He's able to be on your job site and be more productive. So it is a two-way road that I'm looking for opportunities to help them. Is there a tool that they might need? Can I motivate them by a bonus of, hey, if you get this job done early, I'm going to cut you some extra cash. So some of those type of things that allow the subcontractor to see that you've got their back. You're looking out for their best interest. So that's just some of the things that I think work really well to find a way to keep your subcontractors long term by creating loyalty and trust with them. But what if that doesn't work out? What if you've got a sub that just constantly lets you down? You've given him time and time and time again chances, and he just can't perform. He can't show up on site on time. He's messing up job sites. He can't finish a work order. Whatever it is, where it comes to the point where it's time to fire him. This is a really pivotal place that you can put yourself and your company in a really high liability, dangerous spot if you don't do this well. And I think the very first part of that is going back to what I just said, viewing this person as a human being, somebody that you care about. They haven't been able to perform, but they still deserve respect. And I think this is really, really difficult because normally when it gets to this space, the customer's frustrated, your timeline is messed up, you're frustrated because now you've got to figure out how to fix this situation, and it's very easy to take that frustration out on the person that it seems like was the problem. What I try to do is back out of that situation and say, I'm going to try and treat this person with as much respect as possible, but I'm also going to limit the liability that I've got by being very, very thorough with how I do this. Because if I don't, and I go off on this subcontractor and really make him mad, or I don't work to make it fair as possible with what I'm paying them and what I'm not paying them and communicating that well, this subcontractor has opportunity to do a couple different things that can be really troublesome for the company. One is that they can go out and they can damage your reputation. Maybe there's other subcontractors that work for you that they know. They can cause damage there. They can go online to social media and really light you up. So you want to try and mitigate that. But they can go back to the property. They know the property. They know the lockbox code. So they can go back to the property. Obviously, you're going to change the lockbox code. But they can go back to the property. They can vandalize it. They can spray paint it. They can break things. They can, so you want to try and back out of this situation with as little tension as possible. One of the other things that they can do is they can cause harm to your client by putting a lien on the property. And we'll talk about liens in a second. So how do you go about walking out of a property and exiting a subcontractor well? The very first thing that I would say is communicate. Be thorough and understand what's been done, what hasn't been done, what's been paid for, and what hasn't been paid for. So that when you have a conversation with that subcontractor, they know here is where you're done. You need to get your stuff and you need to get out of the house. But you need to be able to tell them, I'm going to work to make sure that everything that you completed, you get paid for. Anything that you haven't completed, I'm going to have to bring somebody else into this property to get that stuff done. And it may cost me more money than what would be the remainder of your work order. So you might not get any extra money, but being very clear about that as you're doing the exit walk, having that conversation with them, you need to be very clear and communicate with them what they can expect from you. Now, in our subcontractor agreement that we've already gone through with them, the very last section of it is about termination and firing and the expectations of that. So you've already gone through and they know that. But you need to make sure that you reiterate that with them at this time. And then once the communication has happened, you've got to back that communication up with detailed notes. Go through with the work order, go through with your scope of work, everything that subcontractor was supposed to do, and make sure line by line what was done, what's undone, and what needs to be fixed. So that there can be a clear line of what they're going to get paid and what they're not going to get paid. And then backing that up with pictures of all of that stuff and then generating an email to that subcontractor that will give them all the information of here's what happened, here's what I'm seeing on site, here are the pictures that back that up. I've got X amount of money that's already been paid to you, X amount of money that is left over, and I'm not going to pay that right now. I'm going to hold that money until this work gets completed. And once you send that email over to them, in our subcontractor agreement, it says that they have 24 to 48 hours to reply back to an email like that with any disputes, arguments about about the conclusions that you've come to. If they haven't come back to you within that 24 or 48 hours, the assumption is that they agree to that and there's no problems. From there, you get your other subcontractor, you get all the work completed, and then everything gets taken care of. And if there is money left over, being fair to the subcontractor, while they might not have been fair to you, you have opportunity to do the right thing and say, you know what, this money was owed to him. He did do some of this work. He spent a fair amount of time, even though I had to go back and fix it. I'm going to do right by him and pay him this extra money. But I make sure to tell the subcontractor very clearly that do not expect any extra money. Because the reality is that when I have to go get another subcontractor and emergency pay them to come over immediately so that I can work to keep up my timeline for my client, most of the time that is going to cost more money than what I have left over on the work order. So I have to make sure that I'm very, very clear with that. And then once everything is 100% finished, you send another final email to that subcontractor that says all the work is done. Unfortunately, there was no money left over and you do not expect another check, or there was money left over and I'll be sending you a check for $100. Whatever the expectations are, you need to close the door on that at the end of it. All of that needs to be done in hopes to keep this subcontractor at bay and keep them from doing things that could cause harm to your company, delays to your job, damage to the property, or damage to the client. But sometimes that doesn't work, and that subcontractor threatens or puts a lien on the property. Now, the subcontractor agreement has information in it that says that you, Mr. Subcontractor, and anyone that you hire are give up your right to put a lien on any property because you are being paid by us, not the property owners. So that's clear. The reality is that that clause doesn't line up and it's not going to hold up in court. But what the card that you do have, and most people don't know, is that if there is a lien put on the property by somebody, you as a subcontractor can go out and bond out that lien and remove the hold that it has on the property. And then you can take that subcontractor to court, civil court, to have a judge look at it, a mitigator look at it, and determine where money is owed. And the way that we typically manage that is talking to the sub who has or has threatened to put a lien on and say, here's the deal. All I have to do is go bond out of this. And it's going to cost my attorney $500 to go bond out of that thing. And as soon as that's done, I'm going to come after you for all of the damages and you're not going to get any money from me. What I would recommend is that you pull the lien off and you sign a lien release form. And if you do that, the $500 that I would pay my attorney, I'll cut you a check for that $500. Most of the time you don't have to go and actually say, I'll pay you an extra $500, but that is a bullet you can have in your gun to say, if you will sign this paperwork that says you release all liens to this property, I will cut you a check. Most of the time that keeps the subcontractors at bay and say, you know what, I'm not willing to go through that. It's too much of a pain. In reality, over 15 years of doing this, I think we've probably maybe once a year we get into a conversation like that, if that. But it is something that you need to know how to navigate. And a lot of people are afraid of liens and please don't put a lien on there, please don't. And they don't know the reality is that you can go in and bond that out and release that and free your customer to do what they need to do. So That's the video of how to manage to keep your subcontractors long term by creating loyalty and trust with them. And if you can't, and you've got to fire somebody off, the correct way or to exit a subcontractor off your property and limit the liability of you and your clients. Thanks so much for joining this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you want to check us out, go see us on at ProServeAlliance.com. You can see all of our content, our blogs, our videos, our podcast. If you want to sign up as a Alliance member, you can do that there. And if you'd like to get a demo of our software, you can do that on there as well. Thanks so much. See you on the next series.